Welcome to SonarFeed, episode 193. It is.
Really?
I can't read it.
Special guest Scott Levy.
Special guest Scott Levy. Let's go.
Guys, you remember when every other week we had Ugo have his computer open?
I know, man. I
No,
know.
Until
finally
right
for
now.
night. Yeah, this is the first
That
time
was
you
good.
haven't had it open.
If I had chugged this, I would have killed it. I only drank half my beer.
That's pretty good.
That is pretty good, man.
Anyways,
I like
welcome
it.
in episode 193 of SonarFeed.
Let's go.
Scott is enjoying his wonderful, wonderful Berliner food
Yes.
real quick, and then he'll join us in a few moments here. In the meantime, we will...
Can you maybe move a little bit to your right?
Yes.
Or maybe if we had a producer
We
that
want to
could fix the
appreciate
camera.
that beer to its fullness, man. I wish I had it something like that. Look at I'm good catching up though.
What do you need,
Welcome
Mr.
in.
Levy?
Yep, come on in.
Nice, man. Come on in. Come on down. The price is right. Love it, man.
It's cool that we're doing all this production right now with Mark, while the show's already on the air.
Yeah. Oh man, you're welcome to have it. We all have him on, dude. Totally, yeah.
No problem at all.
Yeah. If you get any texts on any particular projects that you're working on, by all means, let us know.
Welcome in, Scott.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
Yes,
We are
man.
all obviously huge fans, and we've talked about you and your work for many, many years now here on the show.
Yes.
We've all watched American football and cried.
How many of us
along
were at
with-
Cinerama?
I was not there,
I
unfortunately.
made it. Yep, made it.
Family and out of town, so I was not there, but amazing. I've watched the DVD over
Oh,
and over
dude.
and over and over again.
I watched
Yes.
it recently, actually,
Epic.
right after Schmetz was hired. I hadn't seen it since Cinerama.
Wow.
And I actually went back and looked at the coaches segment, which has Schmetz in it, Dutra, and Ezra together in one segment that wasn't shown at the theater, but because of Schmetz's hiring, I went back and looked at it, and I was entertained. I was kind of surprised, actually. But
Once we found out you were coming out, I watched the hype video, the small, I guess, preview of it, and I was like, oh my God. I see you going in the corner, making sure the camera's there in the locker room scene, and I was like, oh my God. So much has happened since then. So much.
yeah, KC comes in first. He was still playing.
And interesting, there was KC that has been part of so many of our club's historic changing or impactful happenings, man. From that playoff to KC was that last match that broke the camel's back when Siggy was coaching.
Oh no, I was saying Casey Keller
Casey Keller.
was the first one in
Casey,
the locker
okay.
room.
Yep.
And he was still playing then.
Oh,
Yep.
man, that's right.
Yeah,
So it is, but yet some of the same guys were in that locker room.
Yeah.
I mean, Flacco
Yeah.
was there, so who just come back. So it was just interesting to re-look at the film where so much has changed, and yet some things haven't changed.
Yeah.
you
right.
know?
It came full circle.
And it was a great team.
Yeah.
I
It
mean,
is. It
it
has.
was loaded with talent then.
Yeah, we all thought that was the Cinderella. John said here that was our fairy tale ending we all wanted that year, but didn't get. We all wanted that. That was
That
amazing.
year, man.
I remember watching that game from my hotel room in Spain. I'm sorry, Italy.
Wow.
And then watching the video from it later, thinking back to how angry I was in my hotel room to see that. That was an incredible, just all put together.
Dude, so many emotions.
Yeah, although I think, at the time, of course, and you always want them to win. In terms of the things that I would take from the film, honestly, never mind anything that I envisioned for it or that I did right or wrong in making it, just in terms of what happened and being able to see the response of the characters and the guys on the team, it's way more evocative, and there's many more lessons to be learned, even, I think, for this team, because of that loss. as opposed to if it had all come together and they'd won. Actually, I think a lot of the lessons, you would be lost. So, in terms of the love and camaraderie, the things that actually I think this team seems to have now.
Yeah.
That maybe were missing in certain seasons. So from that standpoint, we all wanted them to win. We want them to win all the time. But I think the losses, of course, it's that old cliche. That's where the real life lessons occur.
Yeah.
Otherwise, none of it has any relevancy. It's just,
Seriously.
It's fairy tale land, which, we could certainly draw parallels to the feelings people have right now. And the lessons
we can
that
talk
we need
about
to
that a
take
little
out
later.
of it, actually. So, because if people don't get lessons out of it, then you're really kind of doomed to
Right.
Mediocrity at best. Or
Well, I
worse.
think it's interesting to make that comparison when you talk about, frankly, a league like ours where, players turn over year to year pretty significantly. And we've had a couple of, half the team plus times, it feels like, from year over year. But I would say, like, reading quotes from players, even players who weren't on Sounders in 12, 13, even 14, and seeing how they respond to things like beating the Galaxy away, even just something as simple as that. Like, they're aware of the history of that, and they might not have even been on the Sounders, and maybe they were, and they were like a Freebird who were here years ago, and came back, whatever that situation is. It's interesting to see how that kind of plays out, and like lessons learned, if you will, when you have an Evans and an Alonso and Scott and a couple of other people that are, really the only few that have stuck around long enough.
Mm-hmm.
But that stuff does really like bake itself into your team. Chicago Cubs, like, players go to the Cubs not just because they're going to make $25 million, but because, you're playing in the
Definitely doesn't hurt.
third, it does not hurt, but you're playing in the third biggest
Market.
media market in the country and so on. And, team with great history and whatever, but you have to know a little bit about that history, and their history is not so great.
True.
And they're hopefully have turned it around and so on. But it's cool to see even just an evolution in 2, 3, 4 years for the Sounders.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. It's been a huge evolution.
So why don't we learn some things about Scott Levy?
Yes.
Oh, introduce
The
myself.
man behind the films. Yes, please.
Let's see. I was born in New York. I have 5 younger brothers.
New York, okay.
What part?
I was born in Manhattan.
Manhattan.
So, yeah. Lived there as a kid. Part of it out in Connecticut, too. And went to high school out in Connecticut, but that's not that interesting. But Connecticut's interesting, but I just mean my being there isn't that interesting. But I moved to. I was recruited to move to Seattle in '97, so I'm a Seattleite now.
Nice.
Yeah, for a job, and in advertising at the time, and I didn't really think I'd ever stay because New York was my home, and New York's a special place, of course, to live, and but the mountains really got me. I actually met Adrian, well before the Sounders, became an MLS franchise when it was still USL. Just because I had kind of seen the fervor here. I'd gone to one match.
The early 2000 Sounders.
Yeah,
Nice.
and then I just kind of looked into it. I saw that there was potential here in this market, and so I thought maybe we could work together and promote the team.
Okay.
Of course, no idea it would turn out to be what it was, and Adrian, I don't think had any idea.
It's worked out,
either.
though.
Yeah. I was working with the Seahawks at the time, actually, and people forget that the Seahawks were ready to leave Seattle.
I don't forget.
They're ready to go to LA, but a lot of people do. They couldn't even. It was a stressful situation trying to fill the stadium for their home opener when the stadium was brand new, and they suffered through 2 years at Husky Stadium, and it was just
remember.
dismal.
Oh, I remember.
But yeah, the community was ready to let that team go to LA, and it was saved by a hair.
It was, man.
So that was really when I started working with the Seahawks to try and honestly help save the franchise, and then to fill the stadium.
So were you doing marketing and videos at the time?
Yeah,
For the
just
Seahawks?
doing commercials.
Nice.
And so some of the first commercials I shot myself, actually, when I literally just started directing and then shooting later, but were a series of black and white commercial shot on film, actual black and white film.
Wow.
Of for the Seahawks.
Holmgren.
We did one Holmgren spot that people might remember where he's drawing out a play on a piece of plexiglass, and we're filming through the plexi, and
Wow.
in his office, and he asked if what kind of play he should draw up, as if I would know, and I said, just make one up. He's like, make up a new one? I said, yeah, create one right now, because I want to see you thinking.
Thought process.
And it actually was an incredible thing to watch, which you can't possibly capture in a 30-second spot, because he drew out this whole play, and it was like watching Charles Schultz draw the Peanuts. Every X and O was perfect. They were all lined up perfectly, and it was one take, and he drew up a play, and he made up a play. And he was an offensive coach, offensive genius. So that was probably the first commercial. We did one with Steve Hutchinson.
Controversial player, Steve Hutch.
Yeah, but amazing player.
He was.
He was doing dumbbell presses with 150-pound dumbbells, which was way too light for him, actually.
That's ridiculous,
but he was
man.
injured. He had a bad shoulder at the time, so he could only use 150.
And as controversial as his leaving was, he did help us get to that first Super Bowl. He did.
Oh, he was incredible.
Yeah.
He and Walter Jones. I mean, that's as good as it's been ever. I think, in the NFL in terms of a side.
He might
like
be
that.
my favorite Seahawks of all time, man. Walter Jones.
Yeah.
Walter.
Marshawn Lynch now has definitely impacted that decision, but Walter Jones legitimized the Seahawks in the sense of having like a Hall of Famer, at least through my generation. I wasn't here in the 80s for Steve Largent or Zorn, but dude, Walter Jones.
Well, and Steve Hutchinson, I think, came in the same time. I
Yeah.
think when
Yeah,
we
he
were
did.
in his office, actually, I can recall there was still bits of the draft board up in Holmgren's office, and we could see the stats that he still kept there. And I can remember being blown away just looking at the 40 times of Walter Jones and Steve Hutchinson. I think Steve Hutchinson, if I recall, he ran, like a 4.7, 4.6 something, and Walter Jones ran like a 4.6 flat, something ridiculous, 310 pounds.
I couldn't run that, man.
And we
good
played
day.
hoops with them even when we were shooting there, just monkeying around. Michael Sinclair.
What?
And Walter Jones, he dunked on me.
I
got
Walter
dunked on by Walter
Do you guys
Jones.
remember Scott Levy story time?
Oh my God!
Time here.
He drove. I was guarding.
I would
Walter
put that on
Jones.
my
Get this.
resume.
No. It's for real.
I'm not even joking.
I was guarding Walter Jones. He drove baseline. One, I didn't know he was lefty, so I was guarding him to the baseline. But he went left. He was a lefty, so he drove baseline on me and actually reverse dunked on me.
Oh,
No,
The story may have just gotten
True
worse and
story.
better
Yeah,
at the same time.
Exactly.
jeez, man.
So,
That's
yeah.
outstanding.
It was-
That is outstanding.
it was-
So you had a
mind-boggling.
pretty boring start to getting to
Yeah, no
Seattle.
kidding, man.
It sounds
Yep.
like.
Yeah. So yeah.
So
that was cool.
you have been fairly embedded in the sports scene since you've gotten here,
Yep.
or pretty
From
close.
that.
How were you connected to the sports scene? And again, I'm from the East Coast and from the New York area, living in New Jersey, pretty close to New York City for most of my life. How close were you to it before you came here?
Well, I grew up as a big sports fan. Played sport. I mean, 5 younger brothers, and my dad was an athlete through college too. And I think all of 6 boys, have all played college sports.
What was your favorite sport growing up?
I was best at baseball.
Baseball?
And I would have to say baseball. If I'm
Nice.
really honest, it's still
Yeah.
my favorite game. As a game.
Right.
But it's funny because none of us played soccer growing up, but my father somehow instilled in us that soccer players were actually the greatest all-around athletes.
Which day? Or?
And maybe it's because it's something he didn't play and he had a reverence kind of from afar for
Right.
it, because nobody played soccer, in that generation, even in my generation. Nobody played soccer. It was all Little League.
And we've talked about this. I mean,
Yeah.
when I grew up fairly close to where you did, baseball was the thing. And kids played football, and it's not to say they didn't play every other sport. Everyone played baseball.
Yeah,
out there.
and hockey, actually, where
Yeah.
I'm from. Hockey was huge, too. Everybody played hockey. So Southern Connecticut hockey's huge. And it's a little low, or just lower it so I can be more comfortable. That's good. But so yeah, it was through brothers, and we played a lot of tennis too, I would say. But my father, there used to be a competition, actually, another Scott Levy kind of story that's not about me. I can remember watching the Superstars competition. This will date me, but it was something that was on in the 70s, where the best athletes from all the major sports, and even the minor sports, if they were willing to participate, would compete in an all-around athletic competition for the greatest athlete.
Really?
And it was guys like Jim Rice and Mike Schmidt from baseball, Lynn Swann. I mean, all the greatest athletes from the major sports
a comeback.
would
Show.
compete.
I mean,
you couldn't do it now because of injury and
Contract
stuff. And some of these athletes, they gave it their all. They weren't making as much money, and there was some pretty big prize money involved. And I remember Lynn Swann winning one year, and I remember Kyle Rote Jr., who was a soccer player, probably the greatest American soccer player at that time. He played on the Cosmos. And I remember Pele coming to. So being in the New York area and the Cosmos was such a big deal. Yeah. At that time, people thought maybe soccer was going to really take hold in America, which it didn't. But that was when Kyle Rote Jr. won the Superstars competition and beat all of my other heroes. And my father was saying, "You see what I told you? Those soccer players, those guys. You may not realize it, but they're the best." And so that was my first kind of love of soccer, took an interest in soccer and started watching more of it, even though there was very little to watch.
Oh, man, I bet. I bet. Because even a few years back, it's hard to find. For me, I as a kid, I immigrated from Mexico, and you can find soccer games. And when I grew up here in the 90s, so my favorite sport was soccer in Mexico. I got here as an 8-year-old. Then as a teen, I was playing basketball because in the mid-90s, here, the NBA was king like the NFL is today. Yeah. But I just couldn't find. And the one games we would find every 4 years would be the World Cup, and we would definitely watch.
You mean on TV?
Yeah, on TV. Yeah. On TV. So for sure. So just curious, who's your favorite baseball team growing up?
I have to say I was a big Yankees fan.
Yankees fan.
77, 78 Yankees, back-to-back world champions. So
Reggie
you can't
Jackson.
really beat that. Yeah, Reggie Jackson was my, one of my favorite players. But, Rod Carew, who was not a Yankee, was another one of my favorites.
Fantastic player.
Oh, yeah. My favorite football team was, yes, the Giants, but I also actually liked the Seahawks for whatever crazy reason. Maybe their uniforms. I loved Earl Campbell, who was a running back.
Serious, right?
Yeah. He was beast mode before there was a beast mode. He was one of the original ones.
Yeah, so
sure.
Even the Dolphins back, in the day were so great. But I was a Giants fan. I still am. Giants are playing tonight. I was kind of checking the scores.
What was the score? What was it?
I don't know. I can't see, actually.
Who are they playing? Browns?
We could probably look that up on the internet.
Yeah, they're playing the Bengals.
The Bengals.
So
that would be a good game.
They're driving. They're first and goal, second and goal for you right there.
Nice. Just curious.
2014 Bengals. Minute 30 left in the third.
Nice. When you were, doing marketing and you moved here and you started working with Seahawks, did you also do sports marketing and videos in the East Coast, or is that something how did you get into that?
We actually, the agency I was working for in New York, and this was really the seed. We went through a big pitch for the Knicks, and we went through 2 pitches. We also pitched the Islanders.
Ooh,
so in
nice.
Digging into the business, I was a big Islanders fan too.
Potvin sucks.
I wasn't a Rangers fan for some reason, a big Islanders fan. But anyway, when you pitch an account, you have to look at every aspect of the business.
Right.
And the sports business, no matter what the sport is, it's a pretty fascinating business. I mean, because the tail wags the dog because wins trump everything. Right. So and the product changes, every day essentially, every game. It's a new product. So trying to latch onto something that's meaningful, I just think it's interesting, and it's of course one of the most emotional of products. People are obsessed with it. Look at us here; we're talking about sports. So there's just a lot of fascinating things about it, but yet it's also a local business. Very few franchises are actually businesses beyond. Even the Sounders, as huge as they are, and they have an international following now. That's a rare thing, and even for the Sounders, it's still a local business.
Right.
They make money on us buying beer and showing up and
gear.
Yeah, gear sales, of course, and everything. But the margins are actually not that huge. I mean, it seems like these teams make gazillions of dollars, but without the TV rights, and this is, I'm hardly the expert on this, but it's they don't make a lot of money, especially when the salaries are high, and that's why you see the owners trying to hold down salaries, of course, because it is a thin margin. You can figure 70,000 people in CenturyLink Field packed. Let's say the average ticket price is, $100. So, but think about what the players are being paid. So, $70 million or whatever that adds up to be.
Quick back of the envelope math, the money disappears pretty
quickly. Yeah. So anyway, my only point was that's when I first got into it from a marketing perspective. Mm-hmm. But then I started looking at it and how it's shot. And it's very difficult to shoot sports, of course. It's one of the hardest things technically to shoot. The NFL Films guys are amazing.
Nice. Interesting to learn that.
And so there's ways that sports are shot because of live broadcasts that are actually kind of artistically very limiting. And the NFL Films guys that I would speak to and hiring them to shoot commercials, like even that original Seahawks campaign I was talking about, we had Matt Hasselbeck throwing footballs through at a target. But tracking a ball in flight and shooting it cinematically is very, very difficult technically. Now, most sports, you just zoom out on everything. Almost every goal you see in soccer, no matter what, every great pass, no matter how great the shooter, it's all a quick zoom out in order to say, even the artful zoom of the famous spiraling football captured by NFL Films, which is done as expertly as any human can do it. It's a slow zoom out that's done to keep the ball about the same size in the frame.
Wow.
But that's actually, even as hard as that is, and that's done with two hands, and you're not focusing, you're actually just zooming out, and that actually is the focusing, because as you zoom out, the ball stays in focus. You don't actually have to pull focus as you're doing it. So it's.
But you have to really time that, and
you do have to time it, but they set their servo zoom to actually do that, and so there's still feathering of it. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's actually, to me, and I have become an operator too, and not just a director, but it's still way easier than trying to track. When you're zoomed in, which is like following with a telescope or pulling focus manually as something gets so big in the frame. I'm thinking about, say, Alvaro's goal a couple games ago. Was it against Houston, or who was it? It was a cross from...
rolled on. It's a beautiful back cheeky heel that he got over to him.
Yeah, and Flacco puts it in.
Yeah.
That's an example where it's a cross from Roldan. Roldan is probably head to toe in my frame. I'm zoomed in a semi-comfortable zoom level.
The RSL game.
But I don't even have a zoom, so I'm on a prime lens. So I'm stuck. That's what he is in the frame. When he hits that cross, by the time it gets to Flacco, all I have in the frame is his from about knee down.
Wow.
So if my pan is off, essentially by an inch, and allowing for the angle of the lens, I completely missed it. There's nothing in frame. Never mind that it's also changed distance now, as opposed from being 150 feet away from me, it's 10 feet away from me. So I'm pulling focus. So I don't want to bore you guys with it.
No, this is great, man.
It's actually what we want to talk about.
It's very, very
Us
difficult.
being quiet, listening to you is like when you eat a really good meal and you can't talk because you're really enjoying what you're eating, and it's just silence at the table.
On the camera stuff, though, too, totally. Plus, the only other thing I was going to say is that in order to shoot a higher frame rate, especially at night, you need a lot of light. And so, therefore, you can't have the camera stop down, say, to an f8 or something like that, which has more in focus. I'm usually wide open at f1.8 or f2.8 max. So, the plane of focus is maybe a foot. So, if I'm off by a half an inch on my pan, if it's uneven, or if I'm off on my focus by even, on the lens, it's probably a 1/16 of an inch. Nothing's in focus.
Wow.
So it's thrilling in a way, because
even doing all these films this whole time with that kind of.
Now, if I just want to zoom out, actually, it would be quite easy, and that's what you see all over the world.
Yeah.
I almost challenge anybody to look at even the most amazing broadcasts of soccer. The World Cup, it was incredible, but they're zooming out. or you have to have 25 cameras to capture it. Which the Zidane film, which was my real inspiration for American football, was
What film?
The Zidane documentary. Yeah, Man of the 20th Century, whatever it's the
I
subtitle.
gotta look
You
that up.
should watch it.
Okay, what's it called again? Zidane.
It's easily the best soccer film ever made.
What?
Not even close.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
There really haven't been many good soccer films made, though.
That is actually a very true statement.
You know, so I mean,
This is when
a
Mark
21st
does his
century
job
portrait?
and posts this on the
A
SonarFeed
21st
Twitter.
century portrait. That one.
yeah.
Oh man, that's on.
Yeah, if you just
Let's
type in
on.
Zidane, I mean, people cried at Cannes. It won
What?
won prizes at Cannes. Yeah,
love it.
it's 16 or maybe it's 18 cameras, 18 film cameras on one man for one game. There it is. Yep.
Have you guys
The
watched
21st
it?
century portrait.
It's actually on YouTube as the full movie too.
Shut up.
You should probably
I'm gonna
post the
post
link
it right
on
now.
social
That's
media
what
right
I
now.
Nice.
It's totally worth it if you're a fan of football.
Who's watched it? By raise the hands here,
Oh,
everybody.
I own it,
I've
of
seen
course.
clips.
You've seen clips. I know what I'm doing when I get home.
There's a
tonight.
moment in that film when Ronaldinho, the first Ronaldo, Ronaldo Fenomeno, who's not the Ronaldinho that most people
Yeah.
know, just sets a ball down on his foot at the beginning of the second half. That's just that shot of how he sets the ball down. He just throws it down very subtly onto his foot and catches it. The ball moves not at all. I mean, it's like it lands in some other universe on a pillow on his foot, and he just sets it onto the grass. And I mean, Beckham's in that game. I mean, it was probably the greatest soccer team, ever assembled, honestly. And the footage is insane, and it's layered onto the film very artistically. Is an incredible theme, which basically says, I don't remember the exact words, is that on any given day, there's a child starving, there's war here, there's a mother crying, there's a person gets a raise, whatever it is, but yet at the same time they're playing this game at this moment, and it's really.
I mean, I'll
beautiful.
throw out the U.S. Mexico game to that, talking about that subject. That there's all kinds of things, those teams taking the group photo together before the match.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I get shivers just thinking about it. I put it up as my Facebook cover photo. Because even though there's all this craziness politics-wise, the players made a huge, it's a small gesture or a small thing to take a group photo together, but it was impactful, I think. I think it helped a ton to keep the environment, the game, and the fans focused on the actual beautiful game, So, yeah, completely agree.
Well, and how short it lasts. I think that's the main.
No más 2-0, by the way. No más 2-0. No más 2-0. No más. No más 2-0. Sorry. You had to get that in there. I'm going to get that out a lot more throughout the show.
2-1.
Yeah, 2-1. 2-1.
While we're still on cameras, Marcus wants to know, do you use prime lenses just for the larger aperture as opposed to using zoom lenses?
Always prime. One, because it kind of more when other shooters are shooting with me, definitely prime, because if other shooters, if they have the zoom, they'll touch it, they'll use it. If you really, I don't think there's a single zoom in American football, not one, and that's because I'm always on a prime. Yeah, and for the same reason that Marcus was getting at, is that the zoom lenses are almost never fast enough. Although there's 70 to 2. I have a 70 to 200. That's a 2.8, and so I do use that occasionally, but almost always on a prime is the answer.
I know that as you were talking about it, there's a few friends like Marcus who are big into photography and film that are like, man, this is like porn, man. This is great. This is awesome.
Oh yeah, I mean it's accessible to everybody, so I think there are more camera geeks out there
Oh,
now
there are
than
tons. Yeah,
It's almost easier than soccer. Just
Guilty.
playing on a ball.
Yeah, I wish I could be one. Me too. Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome.
So yeah, but it's hairy. I mean, emotionally, that actually makes it more intense for me, because when I get it, I When Nico scores that last goal, and then he runs right by me, leaps over the barrier, and goes into the crowd, into ETS, and I knew I had that goal.
Oh.
He was running right at me too. So, but then even the pan to it hitting the net, and then a lot of times I can't really look through the viewfinder or in my monitor because it's happening too fast. If I only look in my monitor, I'll miss the ball off the foot. I won't get there in time, as the ball does move so fast. It's meant to move faster than the opposing player, so of course it's going to be faster than me. Right. So I've got to look up with my eye and really focus by feel. And in that case, I was not looking in the viewfinder at all, or the monitor actually, and I could see him coming. So I knew just to keep the camera
right there,
right
where it was,
and you don't see him. You see Jordan a little bit, but then just smiling, ear to ear, and Nico just comes leaping as the flames go off.
Oh my God, man!
Nico leaps through the frame. It's sick.
Yeah, it is, dude.
It was actually, I think it's the best highlight. It's probably the best highlight, other than the Mario bomb that's in the film. It's the best highlight I've ever. And the Freeberg Golasso is right there. But those are the three best things I've ever shot Sounders-wise.
Wow,
I would say.
you'd beat
The
us to
Mario
it.
bomb, the Golazzoberg, and then the Nico leap.
And dude's been here 3 months, 4 months. Right?
Yeah.
But still, that Mario bomb, though, man. I remember that was the one to get us to the playoffs, right?
Yeah, and ours, that was the first playoff win
Yeah.
against RSL.
I remember I was at the facility where I do the announcing. I can't think of the name of the damn facility.
Starfire.
Sorry, brain fart. I was at Starfire. Any pizza
Shout out
there.
to Starfire.
Yeah, shout out to Starfire. Watching it with friends, and I remember as soon as I saw that goal, I was like, I'm going to LA. And then we ended up making plans to drive 2 days later or whatever days later and drove to LA.
I screamed.
Yeah.
I screamed like a little girl.
Yeah. Oh.
So, yeah.
Because
I had been shooting for a whole year,
my God.
remember? If they lose that game, I mean, the film starts with them shitting the bed in Salt Lake. Mm-hmm. A year later, I'm lucky enough to be in Salt Lake again for possibly their first playoff win in franchise history. So it's late in the game at that point, away. And if they lose that series, it's a dismal film. I mean, it's ends pretty sadly as it is, but it would just be unwatchable almost. So, but when he hits that bomb and it sails by Raimondo, it was insane. I went out of my mind. So, of course, I had nobody to scream to because everybody else is depressed in the stands. But unlike when it happened this other time with Nico, and I could turn around and everybody's screaming. I don't need to scream.
Yeah.
They can do it for me.
I can only imagine the intensity. I mean, do you feel the intensity since you're on the field, you're closer? Do you feel the intensity of the fans, of the supporters? I mean, do you get a sense of what the players might get? In front of 50. You totally. Do you feel that way?
I think I do, and I think because I'm looking at it so closely, I'm probably the most aware and critical of the section, to be honest, because I'm turning around looking for. I mean, if there's one person among 400 who's texting, I see it.
Yeah. Welcome to Derek.
And Derek's about to prepare his tweet right now.
If I were the Nazi of the section, I would be banning the shit because it's not cinematic.
Oh my God!
It's ugly, and actually, I would say it's decreased the beauty of the section.
Wow!
This is exactly why, and I mean,
in
not
a
to
marked
preach for a second.
way. And it's not a small way.
This is why it's such a big deal. And I'm not here to preach. He thinks it.
I don't think it. I know it because I'm looking at it.
So,
I mean, I'm
bring it on.
agnostically looking at it as an image. I don't give a shit, it's not my responsibility to govern the ethos or the enthusiasm of the section at all. I mean, so I'm looking at it completely agnostically in terms of what looks impressive. And I will tell you without a doubt, and I've noticed it many times recently, the section does not look as good as it used to. It just doesn't.
Whoa.
But the fervor.
When you say that, compare it to 2013?
Even a few years ago, 2009, where the section is much smaller. So if I were to pan up, I end up into the covered section, in those first couple
I
of
need
years.
some more beer.
So now you have a much denser section, a much bigger section.
Yeah.
But it's
Thank you, sir.
not it's not nowhere near as pretty.
Shit's getting real.
It's just not as well choreographed. People are not in unison it's just messy. It doesn't look as good.
Do you? I'm assuming here that you agnostically feel it, see it. Do you think the players see it or have seen it? Or
No,
sense it.
I think that the spirit. That's I think that's for people to debate who like Tom here, because I think the spirit of the section, the fervor, the commitment, the volume, although less consistent, is fantastic. And the players, there's no doubt it affects the players, and they love it. I mean, I don't know,
affects the
but
players.
of course it does. I mean, otherwise
No
Nico
doubt.
doesn't jump spontaneously into the crowd.
Yeah.
And it's insane. But even the most subdued guy like a Jordan Morris, who doesn't like to milk attention at all, I mean, he can't help it. So in that way, and I think that's maybe the tragedy of it in a way, because I think it's grown. It's still an amazing group of people who are there full of love for each other and for the team. Scragglier, I would say. It's definitely it's a little kind of sketchier looking, I think. People are a little more fucked up, I would say. But I think that's all fine. I would just.
Hi, Mark.
I would just question, and I would love to have somebody, I don't know, contradict me on that, because there are other people who. But I'm looking back at it.
Yeah,
through
you
a
have
lens,
a very unique perspective, man.
I can look back through footage.
Yeah, you have it.
I shoot it every game, so. And not just when it erupts. I'm looking back for even when they're singing. Of course, you're going to get an influx, and so
Right.
it takes even people a while to learn songs and stuff, I'm guessing. It's very complicated, and Tom could go on and on, I'm sure, about the difficulties of it. And I think it's amazing that the blood has gotten new, that it's new people, and yet it's grown. And that's a huge accomplishment, because I know from marketing teams, in order to grow your fan base and get it younger, that's a continual challenge for any
It's
franchise.
the hardest part.
Yeah,
So
it's totally the hardest part.
that ECS has managed to do that and keep the section such a vibrant thing is no small feat. But I would say if it were up to me, for sure, phones would be gone. Anybody texting, if it were me, like I said, if I were the Nazi of the section, anybody texting's gone.
Oh man.
It's just kind of then it's about self. It becomes about
I know, man. He's
then
gonna
it's
get
about
blown
self
up right now.
There's tons of time after the game, and that's like the second game, when everybody can weigh in. But I feel like it's masturbatory to do it during the game, and it's not about the team. The team cannot hear your text.
Yeah.
So
you are. I mean, I don't want to tangent on this. We've tried to have these discussions in the section. I think
Over the years.
the couple of challenges you
Numerous
have
times.
is the section's, generally speaking, the cheapest ticket in the house. We've also, as of last year, between the regular season and the playoffs, most of the ticket brokers got booted. So you're talking hundreds of tickets that were season tickets previously that typically ECS members or other pretty dedicated people were buying because they were spending a little more money, etc. Now, those have flipped. So it's about generations change. People decide they want to retire and move to another section. You need the whole thing to get younger. There's so many factors coming into it.
but are
and
there
I
other
think
sections who are addressing this in any way?
what's that?
Are there other, supporter groups who are addressing this in any? I mean, it's got to be a ubiquitous issue.
It's an issue everywhere. I would say it's an issue anywhere I've seen in the United States. I will say I've gone to games in Mexico. I've gone to games in Italy. I've gone to games in Chile. Do you know that what there isn't in the section, generally speaking? Phones. For the most part. Not like we see here. I know I'll stand with or I'll spot for Beth in upper 123, and she'll have to talk to 20 people from the upper, let alone the people that are down in front in the middle because it's the party, and that's also just, you used the word good word earlier, evocative, of just society now, society now versus society 5 years ago, different place when it comes to technology and your phones and video and I want to have this ready.
Snapchat.
I want to have this ready to shoot the party that happens when the Sounders score a goal and get that shot because the Sounders are going to retweet it and so on.
Of course, everybody understands the modern forces for it, but I wouldn't be one who would forbid it. I think that starts to get draconian. But I think for sure you could, just make it known.
Yeah.
But it's just not that cool. That's something that I guess supporter groups have to deal with. It's like, do you think that the Constitution is set in stone, or do you think it's a living document that we have to kind of adjust, over time? I think there's a lot of ways you can look at adjusting, what a supporter section does. People don't beat each other up in the supporter section the way they do historically, in where the game comes from.
Most weeks.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm not providing an answer. I just know what it looks like.
Okay, and that's good. That's good to know, man. That's good to definitely.
But that is
that.
part of the thing we talk about is
we
know what it looks like visually, and we also know that people see what people are in front of them are doing and react accordingly. So if the people in front of you aren't participating and are just screwing around their phone the whole time, in our opinion, you're going to be more likely to want to do the same.
Yeah, and I'll just give you my personal experience. So when I first went to my first GA experience with the sport group was 2012. I had been going to the game since they started in 2009. I was definitely more of a fan, not so much a supporter, but after going one time for a friendly out of all games, I was hooked and I started to go. But what I did, I'll admit it, I took a ton of photos while I was in there my first few times. All the time I took photos. I'm sure I didn't
of what
of the game of my friends, of me with my friends there. It's just.
So I think those photos can easily be done when at least there's no good time.
Well, halftime,
one photo, fine, or halftime, or
okay
even when it's at the other end of the field. I think when the ball's, and that's when I'll change a battery.
Right.
Is when the play is at the other end. If there's a great fry save or something, you want to cheer for that too. But which there are many.
Oh yeah, that guy. Let's go.
That guy. We should get off and talk about Stephen Fry and how amazing that guy is.
Let's go.
We can have a whole show instead of this topic. But yeah. We can all agree.
Totally do that.
It's not gritty.
So
then now we can. That's your job, Tom.
Yeah, we can. I'll just finish it by saying yes. Took a ton of photos and stuff, but now that I understand it and got feedback, and I would hear people didn't ever. I didn't take anything personally. I just chose to. I understood. And I became a capo for a little while, and I did the cheering like some of the people that are tail people, and it sucked having to go all out, and then you see 5-6 people on their phones and stuff. Oh, it's the hardest thing ever, man. So I get it now, but it's just a matter of people doing it and then being aware of what's going on, and then.
Admittedly, I'm the most sensitive because I'm looking at it 1,000% slow, and I really am looking. I'll have a beautiful shot where all the hands are in sync. And the one guy looking down, texting, it's hideous.
It's tweeting at you. Hey, Scott, I see you on the field.
And then I'm always looking to it is magic. It's amazing. The section's incredible, And so it's part of the spectacle and what's fantastic about it. So that's why it's really out of love and admiration that I wish it were a little teeny bit prettier. So
nice, man.
I want to take a deep breath.
So do I, right?
Yeah. So how about that, Stephen Fry?
Let's talk about Stephen Fry. So, how much? It's weird to talk about keepers. He's in your face for presumably half the game, or if not the whole, if you're going back and forth.
No, I don't get to shoot him. It's actually the biggest. I would not. Am I interrupting you? Yes.
No, you're good.
My biggest regret of shooting this season, especially, is I'm one camera a lot of the time, and so not really capturing. I really need a great long lens guy on a super long prime,
Max
like a 600
Aquino,
prime, a 400 prime. Just focused on that end, or just another camera down that end, even behind him would be phenomenal. A GoPro to me is just hideous. It doesn't really look like anything. It's nothing close to what actually you experience or see. So I don't think it's even worth it.
But you could strap it to your chest and just run around.
Well, yeah, if I could stand in the net really inconspicuously with the GoPro on, that'd be fantastic. But no, you can't capture what he's been doing. To me, he's been the most spectacular player over the course of the season. If you don't include Nico, who's been so amazing since he came, but from beginning to end, even despite a couple of slip-ups, which actually punctuates how great he is, because he didn't miss a beat. He owned up when he fucked up, and then he comes back and he's like Superman. And he's gotten, I'm looking at them in a detailed way in training too recently. I think his physical self, he's in phenomenal condition.
Yeah.
He's bulked up a little bit, and he's got amazing feet. When the guys play their little small ball games or they're in a circle just juggling, Fry's got incredible. All great keepers have great feet, but he definitely does.
Well, you don't really get to see that,
No.
them on the field.
Right.
You see them booting.
But when you watch warm-ups and he boots it 50 yards
Yeah.
to Tom Dutra and Dutra never moves.
Right.
Then you're
That's kind of crazy to think about.
It's amazing.
Right. I will say that's one, look at all the acquisitions and moves Sounders have made in the last few years. I remember the disaster that was the internet when they brought in Fry. People were like, really? Has that guy even played in like 2
year or
years?
something, right?
Like, yeah. And the guy's
and our guy was pretty good.
monster.
The guy we had before him was really good.
Yeah, what a score.
Yep.
Sometimes just
Schwerning, you mean, before?
yeah.
So you brought up Stephen Fry. Anything in particular that he does that's particularly interesting?
Oh no, I wouldn't say that. I think that's kind of the hard thing about keeping a keeper. There's the spectacular save that he'll make that's then forgotten like 2
Right.
seconds later, or a game later. But he just does it all the time. In training, if I'm say finishing in training, and it's not like the backup keepers are not great keepers that weren't like the best in their conference in college or something at some big school. Tyler's incredible. Charlie Lyons,
Like US Open
big,
Cup game.
great athlete.
Wow.
These are impressive athletes, but Fry he's just 2 levels better. It's
Yeah.
hard for the best guys to finish on him sometimes. He's really good. He's been just amazing. Maybe he's just a man on a mission, but he's been phenomenal.
Without a doubt, I think I don't think he's been the man. He's made some super clutch stops, man. Especially the last couple games that.
And he
thank
works.
God for him.
And Schmetzer will tell you too. He always gives Dutra credit, and that's something I would emphasize too. Look, Dutra's just got tree trunks for legs, and he can really strike a ball. It's painful sometimes to watch, and so he puts him through it every day. I don't know how easy it is to. I haven't really seen. And I've filmed a lot of soccer. Anybody who can deliver to the keepers the kind of balls that he does in the spots with the consistency. So,
Wow.
what else would there be if you're a keeper?
Yeah.
There's advice, but how much do you really need that? You need somebody to pound balls into the corners of the net reliably, and he does that
And he's a riot.
day after day. Yeah, and he's a phenomenal guy, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he beats the hell out of him.
Yeah.
Man, I hope we keep him, man. I'm afraid we might lose him too. For
Nope.
him getting his own, head coaching gig or assistant gig, and I hope we keep him as long as possible.
He seems to like it here.
That's good.
From
for
what
sure.
I can
Yeah.
tell.
And he's tight with Brian. Very, very tight with Brian.
Oh, that's good. That's what I
don't
want to
see
hear.
it
That's
go-
music
yeah.
to my ears.
Yeah.
Let's go. Speaking of Brian, so you filmed most of this year?
Most of the games this year, I have only been filming a little bit in training recently. But
Okay.
I think all the games but 1 or 2 I filmed.
So I
missed Jordan. I think I missed Jordan's first goal. Who was that? It was against Philly.
It was
Philly game
a
early in the year.
long time
I want
ago.
to say
Yeah,
that. So I didn't film that. I feel bad.
He's had a
good
couple
guy.
since then, so it's probably okay.
Yeah, I've gotten some good ones since.
Yeah.
Did
yeah.
you? Since you're filming, did you sense what we sense? As fans, that the team was just not feeling Ziggy anymore towards the end of his tenure. And you were closer to the field. You probably.
I wasn't in the locker room or anything like that, so it's hard to say, to be honest. But I think for sure, I would say I noticed more of a difference in Ziggy than necessarily the team. I mean, they're professionals, and but anytime you bring on a guy like Roman and Nico, who's the hardest working guy on the team, I mean, he's at training 2 hours early, I think, lifting and stuff. I mean, he's a little brick shithouse. The guy is amazing. He's not just.
You're talking about Lodero.
I'm talking about Ladero, yeah.
Yeah.
He's the hardest working guy.
Well, he spends, 70% of the game on the ground at this point? Like, for the last couple months?
Around,
but
just not.
But the amazing thing is it's not just during games. It's not just during training. It's not just during every drill. It's actually even before training starts that the guy's working out. And then a Roman who's so lighthearted, he's like a big teddy bear. So I think that changes, I like to see, personally, guys playing games. I think for a while, you didn't see as many games and fun going on. I can remember
by games, you mean just them having a good
Joking,
time,
just having fun,
Yeah.
even in the locker room. And I haven't been in the locker room really this year, but there's two sides to the locker room if you've ever been in there, and they set up soccer tennis court on one side, and when you have more guys playing soccer tennis, even if they're guys that are not in the 18 or whatever, when you have more guys just monkeying around, getting out to the pitch early at practice just to screw around with each other or to stay late and screw around with each other, I think that's when the team is functioning the best. And you definitely see more of that, but it's also the new guys. I mean, and throwing in a couple of Latin guys doesn't hurt either. Because, Ivancic is a really talented athlete. He'll get into the game, but he's not going to instigate the game. He's just a more sober kind of affect to him. So I think
you're gonna have to get him to come on, let's play.
You have more fun-loving guys. It's just and having that mix, which actually the Sounders have had pretty much the whole time they've been in existence. I mean, I think guys like Leo, and Montero, who never wanted to lose any game. Rosales, guys, you had that good mix. With just different personalities, different styles. And I think and I have noticed, so in that way, and Schmetzer's phenomenal. I mean, everybody loves the guy. He's great. He's always been a phenomenal guy.
Oh, yeah.
So everything everybody says, you can't even add anything to it.
You the man.
And I think I would say this, other people have said this about Schmetz, but to me, and I think I might have said this even to you, Tom, at one point, just shooting the shit, the hiring of Schmetz, which I have to give as a fan, Adrian, Garth, Chris, Adrian really deserves the credit for making him interim coach and giving him the job, because he really represents the world that we all want to live in. The world where you get promoted from within. Where the guy who works for it, and it doesn't happen very often.
And didn't complain, publicly, didn't complain.
No, but you're right, man. You're right.
But just work.
And it would have been easy to think
home.
about it from Garth's perspective, to go get a coach that really fits, that maybe he's younger. Who knows? There could have been a lot of
international pedigree, World Cups experience,
and nobody would have faulted him.
Yeah.
So, some people would have faulted him.
Oh yeah.
But still, people would get over it. They would, if assuming the Sounders are still winning.
Well, there's I'd actually say significant contingent of Sounders land that loves the shiny object. That was like, I don't know, guys. I know that this has happened, but I'm going to give it all to Nico. So if whomever, insert manager X is available in December, then I want that person. And you're like, okay, that's fine, but...
Yeah.
I would also give Schmetzer credit, something I have seen myself in filming training, that people all talk about the attitude and the enthusiasm and what a great guy, and he's more open. Players have said that to me too, that he is more open, and I think for players that's huge, because you're wondering every week if you're in the 18 or in the 11, especially one of those guys on the fringe or trading out with another guy who's also great. That's very stressful. I think that's the most stressful thing about being a soccer player. It's a very subjective sport, so it's not like you're on a track team and your 100-meter time is the best 100-meter time. There's no questions. And soccer's totally different, of course. So that does relieve stress. Another thing that I film is dance, ballet, and I have an equal love of it, and it's very similar to soccer.
It is a hard,
not just 'cause
hard
of the feet.
sport and art.
The athleticism, all that, but the use of the feet, but also every performance, every rep, as they call it in ballet, the artistic director has a casting, and those dancers don't know till very close to the performance.
Right. Who's on.
going to be on stage. And it's their whole life. This company may never again do that ballet that they've been longing to perform in. And that's it for their career. And they can be injured the next week and they're done. So it's the most stressful thing, I think, if you were to ask dancers or to ask soccer players. So that's a tax. And Schmetzer's more open. But what I was going to say is actually he does approach training differently. He is pretty granular. But yet he's out on the field moving around and showing where he wants people to be and admonishing. So he's very active, but yet he also believes in keeping it simple. I think he says this all the time. He doesn't, and I think that's his brilliance. I mean, he does think about it all the time. He's very autodidactic. He's studying. He's intellectual. He does his homework. He never stops, but he also, at the end of the day, doesn't overcomplicate it. And that is, you'd have to ask Brian that, but I think that's something he has brought to it.
It's interesting to see. It's like you follow Sounders enough over the years. You read what's in the newspaper, and you see what it's like with him as head coach. He's the guy who at practice, out on the field, hell, at a game, like he's all up in it all the time. Yeah. Game ends, he walks in, he takes his 2 minutes, and then he leaves, and he's done. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see that, like, he's high touch when he feels like he should be high touch. Funny story, walking out of the business meeting, almost 2 weeks ago now, walking out of the business meeting, walking out of the stadium, and we're just shooting the breeze afterwards. He had done a few interviews and things, and I was like, hey, how you feeling about this weekend, whatever, and he's like, I'm feeling pretty good about the team, whatever it was, and I'm not quoting him verbatim. But I looked at him and I was like, so basically they just have to not fuck it up and we're good, right? And he goes, yeah, pretty much. And it wasn't that he was trying to like minimize, like he doesn't want them to lose the game, but it was like, don't lose 5-0 in the first half. He's like, let's just go out there, play our game and do our thing, And it was interesting to see that approach. And it's not that he wasn't stressed out or hyped or whatever the word is you want to use. He was like, no, we're just going to go out and do what we do.
Take care of business.
Move on, and that was kind of awesome.
Yep. So before we get into our SonarFeed questions, Lisa, because you brought up the ballet, what's it like shooting, or how is it different shooting the ballet versus soccer?
Well, soccer definitely is more difficult by far. I mean, the speed and the distance they cover, those things I was talking about earlier. The guy's running straight at you. You think you got him in focus. Then he crosses, at 50 miles an hour. That's way harder. But working head to toe, you can't just shoot a dancer's upper body. You can't just shoot her feet.
Yeah.
Same thing with a soccer player. You want to see the face. You want to see the twisting of the upper body. But yet you don't want to always film it head to toe to get both because that's actually boring. So there are some real similarities. Football, you really don't have to worry about the feet. It's still shot mostly head to toe, but if you get from the ball up to the head on Marshawn Lynch, or I know he's retired, but you kind of got the run.
Did you shoot him?
Oh yeah, I've got a lot of great Marshawn footage. I have both beast, or two or whatever the two major beast modes.
Quakes.
Yeah, beast quakes. Yeah, tons of great Seahawks footage for sure. Let's go. You could compare the Seahawks games to the Sounders too, which is an interesting comparison. Yeah. But
I was at probably most of those.
But yeah, in terms of the ballet. I think it's probably harder to do something really interesting with dance because you want to be faithful to the art form.
Right.
And you could just put a stationary camera up and let the choreography speak for itself because it's very deliberate, whereas soccer's not at all. It's totally happenstance. Yeah. So there's similarities but super differences. Soccer definitely harder, definitely.
Very good.
Nice.
We got a question earlier about the music in your videos. Mm-hmm. Where does it come from?
Yeah.
How do you dig that up?
I have to say I have there's a small group of people that kind of sources the music, and then we end up. Some stuff anybody can find. If you just look on SoundCloud or Free Music Archive, but that stuff gets pretty played out or Google Music. So we take it 4 or 5 steps further and then find out who those people's friends are, actually reach out to them on email, send them edits of the videos before they're ever posted to see what they think and to keep us in mind, so for future compositions. So then they'll send them to
They're
us.
feeding you. Okay.
Yeah, so especially, that's one thing soccer really has going for it, because even some kid in his basement in Denmark is
Right.
really into soccer.
Right.
He's like, oh, this is awesome, soccer in America. Yeah, that's cool, And it helps going to the Scandinavian countries where they speak perfect English. But even Brazil, I source music out of Brazil too, because I speak Portuguese. So
You speak Portuguese.
I do, yeah.
Obrigado.
Obrigado.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
it's
right.
close.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the Spanish. It's like the Spanish pronunciation of.
Just go with it.
Obrigado. Yeah. No, my wife is Brazilian, so that's another connection to soccer that I
nice,
have.
yeah.
So I spend time down there.
We asked that question, and that leads me to think about more questions we like to ask. So we have a series of very intense hot seat. You're going to be on the hot seat right now
Okay.
with the Sounders community.
You should get another
fan
beer
base.
now.
You should have a beer. He's got a beer. He's got enough of a beer. So I'm just going to go straight to one of the ones, so you guys don't mind, that are
Give it to me.
my key favorite critical of analyzing your character, your prestige, your everything. What is your favorite kind of taco?
My favorite kind of taco?
Yeah.
I actually like, it's kind of a cheating answer, but I like a steak burrito. Marinated steak burrito, old style from Chicago's West Side.
I've never had a
Marinated steak on the flat grill, nothing else but maybe some medium hot salsa on it. And
So you got the steak and the salsa,
the steam burrito, that's it.
no rice and beans? Or
No rice and
no
beans.
rice and beans, just the
no
steak.
rice and beans.
All right.
Somebody could go to Sinaloa.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you been to the
Yeah.
Asadero, Sinaloa, the new
No.
place? So there's a new one in Ballard. So it was down in.
Well, I live
What
in
is
Ballard,
that actually
so
there,
that's pretty
Ken?
great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's. I think it's the best Mexican I've had in
I think this whole table
50
thinks
miles.
Is the best
That's hard to
Mexican.
find in
By
Seattle,
far.
too,
So they moved
That's right
into
It's on Leary. 54
into
or 5
Ballard.
Leary.
Check it.
It's worth it.
Do
It's
it.
The best food.
Do
you
it.
It's amazing.
Do
Their
it.
steak-
That's a good question. All right, so straight up steak though.
Yeah.
And their steak is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You will love it.
West Side Chicago, huh?
So are we gonna
Yeah.
we do softball questions? Favorite Girl Scout cookies?
Oh, the Samoa.
There we go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. This guy's a winner. This guy's a winner.
Wow.
No question. Great answer. Great answer.
Like gang signs just
Hey,
went up
man.
here.
We all. You heard it.
You
made
got
the
to
right
live life
choice.
to the fullest.
Aaron,
Got to go for the Samoa.
it's your turn.
Biggie or Tupac?
I got to go Tupac.
Ooh, interesting. From the
Yeah,
East
yeah.
Coast, from Manhattan, from New York.
I still go Tupac.
You go
The
West.
West Coast is the best coast, indeed.
He's an transformative artist. I don't know if Biggie is really the same level, personally.
No.
Great, fun artist. Just
Yes.
maybe not as quite as.
That is the most eloquent answer I think we've ever gotten
This
about
is-
Tupac
this is
and
by far.
Biggie. Yes,
That's the
And
meal right
it's
there.
looks nice.
really on point.
With fresh flour, homemade flour tortillas. $19.99 for that plate.
Yeah,
right
Yeah.
there.
The salsa looks great too.
Ridiculous.
Asadero, si queremos patrocinadores, we're looking for sponsors, man. So we always
Or we'll just go eat there.
Or
yeah,
food.
that too. Yeah, food or yeah, for sure.
So, best $100 or less purchase you've made recently
Best $100
could be
or
$2.
Affected your life.
Yeah,
in a
something that's
positive way.
interesting or
Something you
important
use
to you.
all the time. That's critical.
Yeah.
Like, man.
legal. No, I'm kidding. I guess it's all legal now. Yeah. But
That would actually be the first time anyone's answered that. So
Yes.
gosh, I would have to say it's a little more than $100 though. So that's the thing.
there's wiggle room.
There's
We're not gonna
wiggle-
hold- we're not gonna hold you
I
to
bought I bought a new variable ND filter. Okay, and ND filters cut down the light, so if you're shooting during the day, you can keep the aperture wide open. And I've been a purist about it, using ND filters that are a given intensity. So you can trade them out, and it's a kind of a pain in the middle of a game, like to trade out a filter. So whenever you're shooting, so I bought a variable, broke down and bought a variable ND filter, and it's quite convenient. It's quite nice. So.
Nice.
Yeah, on the front of the lens. And they do affect the bokeh. They change the bokeh slightly, but nobody's ever going to care but me. So So it's
Or
actually,
no.
yeah, no ever see it, especially when stuff's moving around. I think for a still photographer, it's the non-variable ND is still way better. But yeah, that was like $130.
It's a very good detailed answer.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So
What is
How
something
is-
you believe that others believe is crazy?
something that I believe that others believe is crazy. That's a tough one. I don't know if this is an accurate, good answer, but I think that if you are going to consider the existence of God and whether there is a God, you have to kind of reconcile with yourself that love itself is either something really magical, divine even, otherworldly, fantastic, or it doesn't exist at all.
Whoa.
And if you really don't believe in, a higher power, which I'm not saying I don't even know what I believe, to be honest. But I think you have to accept that if there is nothing magical, we are just a massively complex descendant of particles that evolved to become things that think there's something more than particles. And it's either one or the other. No. We're either evolved from something that's inanimate, essentially, like a Lego set that thinks it's alive, or there's something else that makes love real and fantastic, the way we feel it to be, or the way we think it is. And so I don't think you can have it both ways. If there was a big bang and it spewed particles out there and then they just got more and more and more and more complex, it's still just a bunch of particles on top of each other in essence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's something
That's
I'll
the
say to people
deepest
like,
answer
really?
ever.
Why
I'm either super, super excited right now or way depressed.
Oh, no. Man, I love
So I'm
this.
just going to drink this
Why
beer.
not both?
Good
No, it's
answer.
actually, if you
Can
really...
you stop giving good answers?
Thoughtful answers. Eloquent answers.
If you have someone you really love or have kids, it's something that can actually make you think there might just be a God.
Yeah.
Even if you're settled on your logical agnostic position.
Very well said, man. I got
It's a
one.
great answer.
That was a great answer.
It's a great answer.
Sure.
This one, I don't know how you gonna, man. What would be your last meal and drink if you were on death row?
Not Death
meal?
Row Records.
Yeah.
Actually, Death Row.
That one I can get. I would say Pepe's Pizza from New Haven, Connecticut.
Pepe's Pizza, New Haven.
Shout out to Pepe's.
Pepe's Pizza.
From ever
A
there.
close
That's the
second would
first
be
place to go.
Arturo's from Houston in Manhattan. Close second. Very
What's
close.
Arturo's?
Arturo's is another brick oven pizza place.
Brick oven pizza.
Coal-fired brick oven. Coal-fired is kind of rare because it has to be grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Most places, because of air quality standards, don't allow coal ovens. So.
It's a different thing.
But if it's like 100 years or
Arturo's.
something, you can still have a coal oven.
Is that close to Toronto? No.
Toronto might
I'm just
have.
saying. You know where I'm going with this. Yeah.
Toronto might have it, and then I would throw with it, something that you only get on the East Coast as well, which is birch beer.
Birch
And they
beer.
have it at
There you
Pepe's
go.
too.
Oh, yeah.
You can get birch
What's
beer.
birch beer?
And
Exactly.
Got it.
it's kind of like a white root beer is the best way to describe it. It's almost like a spearminty
But
kind
is
of root
it
beer.
alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
Non-alcoholic.
Oh.
Non-alcoholic.
I mean, anything is alcoholic if you believe in yourself and try really hard.
You could put vodka in it. You could easily put vodka in it, but no.
Oh, where? The root beer store. Oh, yeah. Where's that?
Yeah.
Well, I heard it's going out of business. I saw something that might be. Okay. All right. What you got?
What was the last book you read?
Boom. Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, the last. Well, could I include? Still reading?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say the last book I read that was great. There's, I'm usually reading a couple things at once, but The Film School is one, and that's a memoir actually by a guy who has a teenage son who's completely failing in high school, and he decides to let his kid drop out of school, and they just are going to. It's the film club. I'm sorry, not film school.
Film club.
Okay.
And he's just has to watch movies with his dad, and that's the replacement for schooling. He's failing anyway, and his dad decides he's going to spend at least quality time with him before he leaves the nest. He's a divorced dad, and it's
David
really
Gilmour?
a beautiful story. I don't have teenage kids or anything, but it's still beautiful. And then Merle's Door is another one read recently. It's about a guy who adopts a dog, lives in Montana, and the dog eventually dies in the end. It'll make you cry hardcore, but it's really a beautiful story of a relationship with a dog. And the thesis of the book is essentially that a dog is not an accoutrement. A dog is a person. Animals are people, and providing the kind of life that the best life that you can for that person, if you will, is a good thing to do, and it will give back to you and allow you to grow in ways. So those are two books recently.
Nice.
I have a question.
Yeah. Shoot.
What's a word or phrase that you overuse and that you don't care about?
Probably use the word evocative too often.
Evocative?
Which you cited.
I mean, that's twice tonight.
Evocative.
Well, no, but you pointed it out. That's why I
Because
said
it's a good word.
I probably used it 4 times. I don't know.
As someone that reuses stuff regularly, I'm going to totally steal evocative.
I'm glad I'm just not the only one that's looking that up.
Another word I use too much. I don't know. I probably use beautiful too much or something.
Beautiful? All right.
I mean,
But do you care?
yeah, I guess in some minor way. You don't want to be, stuck in your ways and too much. You got to probably, and in what I do, I think the longer I've been doing it, it's important because if I just don't keep innovating, don't keep finding new ways to shoot soccer, honestly, it loses its raison d'être. So there's probably maybe there's another word I shouldn't use. So reason for being.
Reason for being.
It's a good one.
This is a 3-parter.
Okay.
What historical figure do you identify with? Who would play you in the movie about your life? And who would you like to go in a bouncy house with as a historical figure?
Oh, that bouncy house one
Bouncy-
threw me
so-
off.
Yeah.
With the historical figure?
Yes.
Oh,
It could be the same historical figure you identify
Or a
with, or it could
different
be a
one.
different one.
Nah, probably wouldn't. The first one, who do I identify with? I
Yeah.
would say Picasso, not because I'm anywhere close to the artist that Picasso is, but we share the same birthday. So he created and innovated, in stunning ways across all sorts of media until he basically died. I mean, even if you look at his ceramics or works he did late in his career, it's still mind-blowing. And he was doing new things. So, yeah, I would say Picasso. I don't know if he was a great guy, but he was a great artist. Had lots of ladies, which wasn't one of the good parts of Picasso. That's probably one of his. He didn't treat people
you could
well.
have just moved on.
But you know what? I've been into Picasso, so I actually know he wasn't the nicest guy in that regard. So, but yeah, phenomenal artist. So I would say that. What was the second question?
Who would play you in a movie about your life?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Famous
Who would
actor or
play
whatever.
me? I don't know. Maybe Judge Reinhold.
Interesting.
Wow, you just pulled that out of nowhere.
I am not the.
Just
I am
for
not the only one
perspective,
looking that up either.
you have to beat Wesley Snipes playing Eddie Johnson
Yeah, that
in
was
order
pretty
to win this question.
No,
Literally everyone watching right now is like,
Reinhold.
wait, night court.
who would I want it to be? I really like Will Ferrell. So I think underrated actor.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
Oh man.
He's in Beverly Hills Cop.
Yep. He's good. I like him.
It's a good call.
I think it's a good call.
Good answer.
All right, and then now,
And then the bouncy house.
What historical figure would you want to go into a bouncy house with?
I like that question.
Yeah.
You should add that to the show notes.
Oh,
for next time.
Yeah, I need to. It's not in there, but
I don't know. Bo Derek maybe wouldn't be that bad.
Nice.
That hair. Oh my God. That
Wait,
hair.
Bo Derek is also a 10,
yeah.
which if you like soccer, that's a good thing.
She's a
is-
great
is-
number 10.
Bringing it
So-
together. Bringing it together. Bringing it
Ugo
together.
actually has no idea what I just meant by saying that. No. But he's going with it.
I'm
You know,
going-
I would have to-
no,
I
I
would have
know
to-
she was.
okay.
I know
Okay.
the hair. Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah.
She
yeah.
was doing. No, I have. I have that scene replaying in my mind right now. I know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to focus on her hair and the cornrows. Okay?
Yeah, maybe Ringo Starr's wife, Barbara Bach, she'd do.
Wow.
That one, wow, man.
We're using
I've
this
not
question
looked up answers
every
enough
time.
from the show
Yeah.
this much. Barbara.
Yeah, the last guest.
You know, some people in history you just can't outdo them. You know, you can have It's hard to think of even
Impressive.
present day stars or Instagram phenomena.
I have to tell you, we watched,
that would outdo Barbara Bach.
So Hulu just added, they added Spectre. And I was like, wow, that's random that they just got Spectre. Oh, and then they got 21 under Bond movies the next week. Ooh. So I've put them all on my watch list because I've seen them all. TNT or whoever it is does that like Thanksgiving Bond thing. So we watched Dr. No last night and like, you know, whatever you want to call it, remastered, like HD-ish. Pretty amazing. And you're like, wow, stars of the
those are some
60s.
cheekbones.
And you're like, still can't beat some of these people.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, Jack Lord. I was like, I watch Hawaii Five-0 for fun, like old Hawaii Five-0. You're like, Jack Lord is in this movie, and you're like, wow, that I can see why people in 1964 were all about these people.
I mean, I still watch stuff that's before my time, even. So, I mean, I watch old episodes of Gunsmoke.
Yeah.
You know, if you go watch an old episode, it's an amazing show. I mean, it's just beautifully written. It's filmed beautifully. Everything. It's amazing. There's just aren't. There's shows that are top notch now. So. But not quite the same, you know, as those black and white.
We'll do an ask for in the audience, live and online. Any last questions? So we can kind of start wrapping up here. It's almost 9. Marcus wants to know filmmakers he currently looks up to.
Oh.
You know, I didn't see that question coming.
You know, I have some old, I have some old and new for sure. I mean, among kind of younger filmmakers, although he's in his, you know, probably late or mid 40s now. Wes Anderson.
Yeah, Wes Anderson's beautiful.
It's just ridiculous genius. I mean, you just can the guy's amazing. I mean, you can go watch a simple, beautiful movie like Moonlight Kingdom. It's not simple the way he's executing, but just stunning. He blows my mind every
He's a
time.
big Bill Murray fan.
You know. Yeah, he is a big Bill Murray fan, but Wes Anderson's a genius in my opinion. Just everything. You can watch the credits and the design. I mean, to me, everything starts with design, to be honest. And I think he's a director that really epitomizes that. More obscure directors that are some of my favorites, it would be a guy named Henry Jaglom.
Henry what?
Henry Jaglom.
Jaglom.
Jaglom. A couple of the movies like
Jaglom.
Always But Not Forever, where they're almost like pseudo documentaries where he gives the actors a backstory and a very loose script, and then he has them improvise within the bounds of their characters, and he bases a lot of it on even his real life. In Always But Not Forever, he reenacts his breakup with his wife, and he casts his actual ex-wife to be in the breakup in the film. And he goes through this catharsis in the movie that you're watching, and it just blends
What's the movie called
reality.
again?
Always But Not Forever. Another one, New Year's Day, is like the sequel to that, where he moves from the West Coast back to the East Coast to New York City, where he's from, and he goes to move into an apartment, and there's all these young people in the walk-up that he's supposed to inhabit, and he has to like commingle and party on New Year's Eve with all these younger folks, and he's just completely blown up his life and moved back to New York after his divorce. And it's based on what he actually did. He left L.A. and moved back to New York, and he makes a movie on it. But it's also brilliantly executed. It's not just thrown together. I mean, there's films that I would say would be some of my favorites. Some of my top movies of all time would be, I mean, even schmaltzy movies like Kramer versus Kramer. Robert Benton is the director. It's exquisite. Every scene. And if you look at Meryl Streep in that movie, she's stunning. And she's stunning, but it's no accident. Everything is lit to look as if you're really sitting in front of Meryl Streep. And it's so expertly
Benson?
done.
Who was the director?
Benton. The Misfits, John Huston, another towering force of direction. Marilyn Monroe's last film, Montgomery Clift's last film, Clark Gable's last film, all together. And it's an allegory really about the world and the demise of beautiful natural things like horses. like wild horses and cowboys. And it's heartbreaking. Marilyn supposedly was almost impossible to manage, and she just couldn't show up to the set. There was all sorts of stories about it. But she's brilliant, and she will break your heart, and she never looked more beautiful. And Clark Gable's kind of toward the end of his career is this aging, obsolete cowboy. It's unbelievable.
Man, I want to go to the movies with you, man.
Yeah.
So
How do you feel about Stanley Kubrick as a director?
Oh, I mean, Kubrick, I think, is a phenomenal director. I would certainly put him, up near the top. I mean,
he's probably my favorite one. Period. Just the way he does everything back from like The Killing, those early like the 1950s little ones that he did that were just amazingly beautiful.
Well, 2001. I mean, it's
2001.
He came from still photography, so I think, and I mean, so did I. Really, I started in stills, and I think that most of the great directors started somewhere as a kid in a dark room with black and white film, and because it's still, when I'm looking at even Sounders highlights, honestly, I often freeze the frames and stop the motion, and I don't want to see the slow motion. I just want to look at the image, and to me, this is why I see the section the way I do. And it's something I tell young people who work with me, is there should be nothing wasted in the frame. You should see the guy in the ugly yellow jacket in the left-hand corner of the frame. You really, and it will make a huge difference nobody's going to pick that out or notice it. And actually, you can look at my stuff and be very hard to say why it looks any different from what anybody else does. I'm shooting the same game, the same happening. But I hope, and I shoot for some additional level of image integrity and intensity and cinematic quality to it, that you feel it a little bit more. And I think that those little teeny details, which Kubrick
absolutely
was obsessive about,
to almost to a fault.
Yeah, and a Wes Anderson, same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, I really want to see a movie with him, man.
Yeah,
I mean, Woody Allen, would be another one you have to say. I mean, he's like the Bob Dylan of movie making. He's. Anything else?
Oh, a lot. I know. Yeah, Max had a question.
Yeah, Max.
What's one thing you want to improve on in your own work next year?
He asked, what is something you want to improve on in your own work? Also a fellow artist, photographer.
For sure, yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot more I could cover, especially, but that would be more of a budget thing. And like I said about covering the defense, which is such an important and neglected part of the game. I actually thought on my drive over here, I was thinking, not because I thought it'd be asked the question, honestly, just because I think about it all the time. And we have this playoff game coming up, and I'll be shooting it. What would I do? I'd love to just be able to focus on Chad Marshall's feet.
Oh yeah.
Okay? That guy's feet are amazing. I mean, he's this big galoot, okay? Doesn't look like he's particularly graceful or anything, but he is.
Meanwhile,
he's amazing. So to be able to focus more on those little things, which you'll see in the Zidane film, and watching Zidane's
I can't wait. I'm
feet
definitely going to watch that when I get home.
It's a mind blower.
Don't tell the Sounders. Chad Marshall feet ISO camera.
I mean, just watch him pass the ball. I mean,
Yeah.
he's so accurate.
Yep.
He's so good, so skilled. But in terms of, it'd be cool to be able to bring more motion. I've tried some of that with using a Ronin that I have where I'm running with, but I find sometimes that's a little gratuitous because, the camera's moving, but what am I really showing you? Other than it's cool that the camera's moving, and it precludes some real fine focus. So I have to compromise on my depth of field and things to keep more in focus as I'm moving, because you can't be monkeying with the lens and throwing off the balance of the stabilizer. But definitely movement and going smaller with cameras are getting so small, and yet are also running high speed. So I think you could have more of them. Cutting more between them would be something. I mean, even focusing better on the section or being in the section. I can't do that. And I have shot from the section sometimes, and being really uptight and watching people's hands or watching people's faces. It's all if I'm in one place, I can't be in another. So there's an infinite number of things that I could do more of at the games.
Good question. Good question.
But if you watch me, I'm running around. I'm never
Non-stop.
just camping. The most stressful thing is I actually can't camp on the goals because I really do want to, if a moth flies by me and I miss it and I can't go and get the moth, I feel like I missed something that was magical about that game. If a plane looks like it's going to fly between the struts of the arches and it just looks graphically cool and I can't point the camera up and focus and change my exposure in time to get it, I feel like I missed something cool.
It's so awesome to see your passion, man, as you're describing everything. I'm so lucky there's artistic people like yourself, like Marcus, that do what they do, because I love it, but to me, it's such a foreign language. But seeing your work, I could see how you're describing your thoughts in action as you're doing your work.
And it should be driven by a purpose, which to me, as opposed to trying to say something, quote, artistically, when you're there at the stadium, it's a different experience than sitting home watching it on TV. Yeah. And I feel, when I made American football, and even to this day when I'm just shooting a game, I want to put somebody not just in the stadium, but even in my shoes. Like if I feel the splash of the water off the net onto my face, I want people to feel that. And I'm privileged. I never forget. I'm lucky to be there, right there. And just to see the shirt clinging to Nico's torso, from 5 feet away, and you see this little dude who's just kind of cut out of Italian marble. So little details like that to be able to convey some of that. Just the pellets coming up, or things that in the midst of high-fiving or texting you can't really see. So the more I can just deliver that to the people that share my own love for the team, I'm serving a function, I guess.
Good. Mark, you have a question?
So I've got a three-parter here. First one is your favorite Sounders player, whether it's to film or just to be around.
Favorite Sounder player to film or be around?
I would have to say Brad Evans. There's a lot of great guys. I happen to know Brad a little bit, but and he's dealt with this. As I talked to him recently, he's dealt with this kind of underrated player tag his whole career, but he's just covers an amazing amount of ground, still probably the most on the team. There's another guy, he's so accurate. He can pound a ball into the net. We haven't seen him do it much because he has been playing, the back line a lot, but man, he just doesn't miss. And I've seen that in training recently because he's been playing a little bit more offensively.
Has he ever missed a PK?
Yeah, he's been with the strikers group some. Yeah. It's, who knows if he'll get in there, and there's a lot of great guys on the team in his area of the field. And he's had a little bit of injury, but he's really a good player and a smart guy, cool guy. He's got a great dog, really cool. Yeah, cool.
Was that volley? Is that like 2 years ago already? That volley goal
but a great
had?
player. Not just a good guy. I really feel like if he's on the pitch, and Freeberg seems like a great guy too, but maybe it's one or the other. But for my money, the Sounders win with Brad Evans.
Brad Evans, yeah.
So, and then
Part two,
stadium you most want to visit for soccer, whether to film or just go to.
Stadium you want to visit for soccer?
I haven't been to see NYCFC, so my hometown. So that would be number one. I've actually wanted to go to Orlando too, and see what they have going on. Haven't been down there,
especially with the new park next year. So
did you see this picture today?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty. It's going to be a lot smaller than where they're playing right now. As somebody who's gone to literally hundreds of baseball games at Yankee Stadium, and I've only been to a few at the new Yankee Stadium, it was weird. It's really small. Like, people joke about it online. It's super small soccer on that field.
Yeah, the pitch.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Starfire's bigger.
It's just crazy.
Really?
However, there's something to. I think we're lucky in Seattle. Our stadium's downtown. You're in town. You walk inside. It's it's bright, and the field's green, and it's loud, and it's this. Yankee Stadium has something that I think when you read about, soccer pitches in London or whatever, where people talk about, being on the bus or riding the tube or walking around. It's just people and throngs and whatever. And then you walk inside and it's like this palace. Like Yankee Stadium has had that for a really long time. And I don't say that just as a baseball or a Yankees fan. Right. I've been to probably 15, 16 MLB parks. There's not a lot where you walk out of like Brick City and you walk inside, especially if you come in like from the outfield side, and it's just this grass expanse on like a Sunday afternoon, whatever. And if you've done it a bunch of times or you've done it one, it's still kind of enthralling. So I think they've got that going, for them. And I think that's something that we have in Seattle that I almost feel like we underappreciate. Like you come in and like, forget the turf for a second. Like you come into just this expanse of a stadium with a beautiful view of the city, and cranes or not, like it's just an epic spot to be able to watch.
Oh, for sure.
No, it is. Man.
So,
it is.
So I love to go up to the 300 level before the game too. Even just looking out from the stadium on Elliott Bay, it's totally special. It's, and so if you only have to go to like Chicago or something and see where the Fire play, and or even the Red Bulls, and they have a great stadium, but it's just
not the same.
Separated.
Being out in the
There's really good food outside the Red Bull Arena, though.
It's amazing.
Portuguese. There's a bunch of Portuguese restaurants.
Really?
Not
I
that
didn't
far
know
away.
that.
It
is the neighborhood.
Unbelievable. Oh my God.
Next time.
That's probably
One day.
developed.
What was the next part of the question, Mark?
So it was actually about gridiron stadiums, and I kind of want to twist that to more, where would you want to film or go to a game, soccer-wise, outside of our country?
Oh, I think, I would have loved to go to Maracanã, sure, and I didn't do it. I could have gone, I guess, but I kind of almost know too much about Brazil to, it's such a messed up place. I couldn't deal with it, and I also have a family and 2 little kids, but probably to go there just by myself with like some buddies and just be in the crowd among a bunch of Brazilians. I mean, that would be it for me, I think, more than even going to Barcelona or something like that.
Yeah,
I recommend Azteca Stadium.
Well, and that, I mean,
done that. That was fun.
That would be another one. I mean, Mexico City is it's just an amazing city too. I mean,
We
but
went, the 3 of us, and 120 other friends. But
No, it was amazing, man. It was nuts.
similar to Rio though too. You can't really go with a family, and feel safe. In my opinion, but
we went with a different family.
Yeah.
I mean, with little kids.
Yeah.
Not a lot of 6-year-olds pulling into Azteca.
There was a family there though. I remember, and I remember there was a kid, and I was like, man, what? Yeah, man.
What?
Yeah,
Well, and I think if you're a local family, it's a little better than if you're like some
sure.
gringo with its,
Right.
sticking out. At least in Brazil, believe me.
same in most countries. It's
Yeah.
the same. But,
But not so much in Europe. I mean, Europe, it's safer.
to respect your time, because I know it's late and you've been here, it's been amazing. I've been loving all these questions and
No,
getting a
it's been fun.
sense and
I
a
love
feel
it.
for everything. But we also wanted to ask you, is there something in particular you're working on, or something that you want to share with folks online and here to check out?
For sure, I think it's been so, fantastic what's been going on. I did go down to Fuel and got to speak to Ziggy, on his last day here, essentially. And, of course, that was sad for a lot of people, and I liked Ziggy a lot. I think he was an amazing coach. But I really started, filming with a little bit more intent, honestly, after that, with the idea that something, could happen. And even I think Tom and I even spoke about this not long after that, and thinking, this could be the wave to catch right now. I always say that soccer's like surfing. I mean, you're bound to hit a trough and get buried and shit the bed. It's inevitable that teams do it, but you've got to be ready to paddle into that wave when it comes and ride it as long as you can, as well as you can.
God, you've been writing it.
Yeah, so we're riding one, and I think that's the challenge that Smetzer has. How do you prevent that dump? Which and I think that's the art of it that nobody can answer. So or just don't have it at the wrong time. Do it when you're up 3-0. In a series. So I haven't been posting stuff intentionally because I want to put it into something. And there've been some pretty. People know there've been some pretty cool highlights. The recent ones have been pretty epic and epic to look at again. And I think I've had some unique angles on them too. I actually try and look at the lineup. When they're doing that photo at the beginning of the game, and I actually do think to myself, and I look at training sometimes, honestly, too, and see what they're doing and try and figure out where that goal is going to come from, which side of the net it's going to be on. And I've been pretty lucky with some of them recently where I've just been in the right place. So I will be anxious to share those and put them into something. And hopefully I'll be able to get a little bit more insight from people, too, whether it's players or people who aren't players, just about what this run has been like and why and what it's felt like. And I will do that at some point soon after the season, after it's done, but we're not done yet.
That's right.
We're not done yet.
We're not done yet.
Done yet.
Will you go to Colorado?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I
Great.
mean, I need to I say that, but I need to lock down my credentials and get that stuff taken care of. And but that's my intent.
And if Sounders went away to Toronto, would you go?
Yeah. I think for the rest of the way, as long as I can get passes through the league, which I don't ever take for granted, because even to make the film, honestly, I had to get kind of special permission. It's not something a league like the NFL or MLS does easily. And the Sounders have been really cool in terms of appreciating what I can do occasionally. And so hopefully I'll get to continue that through the rest of the season. We'll see.
That's awesome.
Dude, I'm hyped. I'm so hyped. I'm ready.
Yep.
We can hear karaoke going on. Do you have a go-to karaoke song?
Oh, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, Elton John.
Wow.
Man.
Are you going to stick around for karaoke?
Thoughtful.
I will not sing it, but we could have Tom. We could have Tom give it a try.
So Ugo can sing it.
I'll do it in Spanish.
You have to do it Tony Orlando or something, I think.
Do we have any other questions here?
I had one online.
Oh, hold
Do you
on.
ever miss
Do you ever?
watching it? Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah. Do you ever miss being able to experience the game in the moment versus shooting for the future edit?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time I miss it, mostly because I'm really stressed during the game. If I'm changing a battery, it literally takes like probably 2 seconds for Jordan Morris to go from like the other end and score. So
Max is nodding feverishly over at the other end.
there have been a few goals over the years. I can remember a couple. I can remember a Montero bomb that against the Galaxy, I believe, that he scored.
40-yard bomb?
Right after halftime. And it's like there was a really full elevator coming from the media level. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. I'll take the next one. Yeah, well, I missed the fucking goal. And Freddie was incredible. I mean, you have to say Oba, Nico, but before them, there was Freddie Montero. And the way he touched the ball was absolute magic. I mean, just defied the forces of the universe. And I get stressed. To answer the question, I miss it all the time. And occasionally I get to feel that same feeling with everybody else, and it's awesome. It's awesome. So that's why it's going to be so much fun on the 22nd.
Let's go.
I
man.
think
I'm
something
so
you just said, Aaron, you look like you had a thought, so I don't want to cut you off, but you're like Freddie Montero touching the ball and like defying the forces of the universe.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the reason that all of us love soccer, and whether we all play or not, there's just something to that. You're like, how did that person actually do that? Watching like Özil like juggle the piece of gum he just spit out of his mouth and then like turn around and boot it and kick it on the camera screen, your lens. You're like, how did you? I'm just gonna leave.
Well, and that's what soccer players, if you ask them, as I have many times, what's magical about soccer, they take for granted that they're using their feet.
Yeah.
They rarely will say, oh, what's amazing about soccer is we're doing all this stuff with our feet. Mm-hmm. The only soccer player I think that ever said that to me was also a player that had been an athlete in another sport before. And that was Sid LaRue. Because she was a phenomenal softball player, baseball player, and then chose soccer kind of a little bit later. And she's just like, just doing shit with your feet is just, it's nuts. It's
It is
the hardest thing there is.
It is, man.
So that basic fact, never mind the free flowing and there's no
Yeah.
plays, it never stops. You're using your feet. You know, that's insane.
It is, man.
So that's why you have the turnovers. That's why it's magical.
Yeah.
Love it, man.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Scott. That was
Thank you, guys.
amazing.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Great, yeah, man.
Yeah, thanks
Truly.
for coming.
Cheers, man.
Hopefully it won't be
Oh,
the
yeah.
last time.
There we go. Now we can
Salute,
do
cheers.
the proper stuff. Yeah.
That was awesome, man.
All right.
Cheers, guys.
Should we sign off?
Yeah.
Thank
Bye,
you, guys.
everyone.
That was
Bye,
awesome,
girls.
man. Thank you, Scott. That was badass. That was awesome.
No, thanks. It was fun.
Yeah,
We'll see you
it was,
Tuesday.
man. I'm so ready for this game now.
Yeah, it's going to be
Next
good.
Tuesday?
I can't wait.
Big
Nice.
UW starts there. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Oh yeah.
UW has NCAA's coming too. I think 2 days. I think they play on the 20th in Seattle.
Yeah, they do.
And
Do
they
they
play.
really? 20th,
They will probably, if New Mexico beats Portland, they will play New Mexico, and that's O'Neill Fisher's old school. And the last time they played in the NCAA's, New Mexico beat them in the Elite Eight, and it was O'Neill Fisher that had the
Oh.
assist.
Yeah.
So it's
Yep.
like there's a lot of stuff going on. But that 22nd game is going to be out of
I
hand.
can't wait, man.
Can't
I'm
wait.
hyped. I am ready.
Let's do it.
Thanks,
All right, boys
you guys.
and girls.
Take
Thank you
care.
so much.
Adios.
Later, guys.